You're putting the fox in charge of the hen house. That's how the Jamaica Beach Birthright environmental movement JABBEM is blasting the government over what it calls the exclusion of the National Environment and Planning Agency NEPA from the Environment Ministry. The organization is calling on the Andrew Holness-led administration to remove the environmental regulator from the office of the Prime Minister. As it says, the current structure weakens the oversight of NEPA. Amoy Harriet reports.
Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness, in a meeting last week, explaining the reasoning behind placing the National Environment and Planning Agency NEPA under the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructural Development, which sits in the office of the Prime Minister.
Essentially, this is Jamaica's environmental protection agency, but it is also Jamaica's development agency. And that is always the tension between preserving what you have, your natural assets, and adding value to your natural assets through development. And that explains why NEPA resides in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development.
But this move hasn't gone down well with some in the environmental sector who warn the regulatory body is being turned into a political tool. In a press release on Monday, the Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement JABBEM said, quote, "This decision strips the new ministry's genuine regulatory authority, diminishes its legitimacy, and reveals that its establishment was not intended to strengthen environmental protection, but instead at preserving centralized political control over environmental decisions." Dr. Devon Taylor is president of JABBEM.
NEPA is the regulatory body that is the final decision maker on everything that is environmentally related in Jamaica. This is why the Natural Resource Conservation Authority that was created in 1991 was charged with that responsibility. And so a ministry without, an environmental ministry without that regulatory body is powerless, right? And since the power is enshrined in the NRCA, in NEPA, and for that to retain itself in the Prime Minister's office is saying that the Prime Minister is controlling the power of the environment instead of the ministry that was created to do so. What we are seeing here is that you're putting the fox in charge of the hen house.
He insists it's a clear conflict of interest for the ministry in charge of infrastructure development to also control the environmental regulator.
Right? Where the same ministry responsible for mega project infrastructure and development is also controlling the environmental regulator. Right? This means, right, that what we should be seeing that this environment ministry challenging harmful development is overseen by an arm of the government pushing for these developments.
Dr. Taylor pointed to a development in which he believes political interference in environmental oversight led to questionable approvals.
The development that's going on the Ryabuna watershed, in Roaring River, where there's building out. Even yesterday, they ripped down an entire piece of coastal forest. They're changing the course of the river, right? This is failure, right? When you have these massive, they're building out some 800 houses on a watershed, right? That sits right next door to the ecological sensitive Duns River, right? And this is a project that is endorsed by the government.
Our newsroom contacted Environment Minister Matthew Samuda, who has agreed to an interview at a later date. Amoy Harriet for CVM News.